Surprise, motherfucker.
It's probably a universally relatable experience that when getting into arguments, especially online arguments, that some people just want to experience conversations, talk through ideas, and explore them with other people. And then there are people who just want to win at all costs. And when dealing with a particular type of person on the internet, we call this lying for Jesus. Now, our good friend Redefine Living is no stranger to dishonesty. He subscribes to the most dishonest position it is possible to hold on epistemology and theology in general, called presuppositional apologetics. Now, I went over his absolutely abysmal use of the thinking tool we call a brain.
How dare you!
In my latest video. But here is a little gift to all of you wonderful people. Thank you for getting me to 600 subscribers.
Nice.
And here is your, just a small little extra smidgen of my gratitude.
Oh, how very kind.
So, I'm going to cover a little interaction I had with our friend Redefine Living. It's going to be pretty short, but this is just a gem. I happened to run into him randomly on a video I pulled up while looking for some fodder for my new crusade against presuppositionalism, and lo and behold, he was in the comments section. Now, I did end up commenting on his comment, but he also noticed that I left a comment as well, and he returned the favor. Now, I'm not going to go over the entire conversation. It's pretty typical presuppositional BS. This video is kind of serendipitous, the topic title at least, because I hadn't been searching for these keywords, but it came up. Do presuppositionalists conflate ontology and epistemology? And that's precisely how I felt about that was my main takeaway from my conversation with Jay Robin. And so Redefine Living takes the time to spew his script, basically. This is a script of presuppositionalism. You would need a metaphysical framework in order to even make an assertion. So what metaphysical framework are you speaking from? Here's the issue. You don't get to just randomly pick a metaphysical framework. So I tried to explain to him, we have observations, and then we can form opinions from there. There's no other options. And, of course, he just accuses me of dodging the whole thing. There's a lot of text before we get to the juice of this, but the part that I'm interested in is down here. Right here. So, he quotes me saying, I'm assuming I'm rational. This is what he's doing. You see, I spent 4 paragraphs explaining. This is not a direct quote, but I did say I then spent about more than 4 paragraphs explaining. So then he quotes me. That's what he's doing. He's quoting me, right? Here as well, if solipsism is true, I still observe. Down here, if solipsism is true, he's quoting me, then responding to me. So, what's the problem with this right here?
I think I can smell shite.
Well, I never said that. This is a lie. This is a lie for Jesus.
Please clap.
A blatant misquote. Now, I was taken aback for a moment because I know I didn't say that. I have no memory of saying that, and I know that's not a thing I would have said.
In what world would that happen in? In what world? In what world would that happen in?
Because my whole thing was entirely about how you don't assume you're rational, how you build the case for rationality, especially without God, because you can't build a case for God without rationality, so you need a case for rationality first, no matter how you approach this. So I wouldn't have said this. I also knew that I didn't. So just to confirm, let's go here. Okay. Now there's 2 search results, and I'll just let everyone check. These comments are not edited, so there's no possibility that I took anything out. So, well, let's see what the second search result is. Or the first one. First one chronologically, second one we're going to be looking at. So, I do say just assuming I'm rational. Okay, that's somewhat similar to this quote, right? So, either he's deliberately lying, or he's just not paying any attention, which is a form of lying because he's pretending to be responding to something I'm saying while not even paying enough attention to respond to what I'm saying. Here's the thing. If you're not going to pay attention to what I write, just don't respond. He quotes me saying, I'm assuming I'm rational. I didn't say that. I said, just assuming I'm rational, but that's not even the whole thing. Just assuming I'm rational is as big a logical mistake. So I'm actually explicitly saying that you should not assume you're rational, and I should not assume I'm rational. And I've discussed that the entire way so far. So the fact that if he mistranscribed this, then again, he's lied the entire time so far that he's responded to me, and lied the entire time that I was dodging because he hasn't been reading. If he thinks that I'm saying this, that I'm saying I assume that I'm rational, because that's the literal opposite of the content so far, and the rest of the way as well. Or he's deliberately doing this. Now, I think the latter is actually more likely because he has to literally type a different word. He's not copy pasting and like having a dyslexic moment. He has to add in the I am in front of this quote. So he's not even copy pasting and just responding to sentence fragments. He's literally going in and adding his own thing. So yeah, proof that he's lying. Either way, he's lying somewhere down the line. So, yeah, I never say this quote anywhere in this entire conversation.
Shame, I know your name.
And yeah, I guess I'll just go over his response to this. So he's responding, I'm assuming I'm rational, accusing me of saying that, which I didn't. And his response is, lol, yeah, well, so does the schizophrenic. No, not necessarily. Schizophrenics don't know what to think. That's the whole thing. You're so uneducated on mental health. Schizophrenics don't know what's real. That's the problem. Okay? But you know what does happen? Redefine Living assumes he's rational.
You hypocrite.
We'll unpack this. He goes on to say, I reject your unjustified presupposition of a rational mind. And he doesn't do this because there's logical problems. He does this because you reject my God that has made your mind in a way that it can be rational. So he believes that God made my mind rational, and yet he's rejecting the premise that he believes in revenge for me rejecting, or in revenge for me supposedly putting forth the unjustified presupposition of a rational mind, even though he agrees with that presupposition. He presupposes the rational mind of God, which allows him to presuppose the rational mind of humans.
You're stupid!
This is again another distinction between our worldviews that you have failed to acknowledge.
You know, it's amazing. You are 100% wrong. I mean, nothing you've said has been right.
This is just word salad. There's no reason I would have had to acknowledge this, and it's not a distinction. I acknowledge that there's a distinction between God, his worldview that God creates rationality, and my worldview that doesn't. So I don't know what he's talking about, but if he's talking about presupposing a rational mind, he's the one who's not acknowledging this distinction, and he's flipping it. He presupposes a rational mind of God and rational mind of humans, and I don't presuppose that. But in his view, I do presuppose that, and I guess in his view he doesn't presuppose that, even though explicitly he does. He contradicts himself. There's no way around that. If you presuppose God is responsible for rational minds, you've presupposed the rational mind of God and the rational mind of humans. So he's just fractally wrong.
Reality can be whatever I want.
It appears that you are, in fact, the one who just makes stuff up, quote unquote.
You're not very bright, are you?
I haven't presupposed a mystical being who just conveniently just makes me right all the time. He has. The justification for the starting point of my worldview is that my worldview has been revealed through natural and special revelation.
Reveal to us God's will that we may blindly obey.
Free us from thought and responsibility.
We shall read things off you.
Then do them.
Your words guide us.
We're dumb.
And here's the kicker. Here's the defeater of his entire argument. He needs to presuppose the rational mind and reliable senses in order for this natural and special revelation to even be accurately representing reality. And he needs to presuppose rationality in order to conclude anything from especially the natural revelation. Because what is this natural revelation? Oh, well, it's a horribly fallacious argument, but it supposedly rests on the rationale that the creation needs a creator, basically.
Yes, I can definitely smell shite.
He's the one who needs to presuppose that he's rational and not hallucinating in order for any of these revelations to be of any use to him.
Nani?
Now, I understand that you will reject this and demand a type of evidence.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
But immediately upon doing so, you will expose your hypocrisy and double standard because you are unable to provide a standard criteria for your own starting point. I'm simply asking you to be consistent.
You, my friend, are just a few plums short of a fruit pie.
The irony being, he's completely inconsistent. He's accusing me of doing what he's doing. The reason I reject this is not because he lacks evidence, which he absolutely does, and he can't give it, and this is the whole tactic. He tries to get me to defend instead of give evidence for his position.
I'm not prepared for that.
So, but he's not paying attention because I reject this not on that basis, because we haven't even gotten there yet. I reject this on the basis that he cannot even prove that the special and natural revelation is even mildly reliable at all. and he violates his own principle and his own standards, being inconsistent in that he has to presuppose a rational mind and presuppose reliability of the senses in order for either of those revelations to give any meaning and to have even the slightest probability of being true. So, and he accuses me of my understanding of any metaphysical realm rests on the foundation of unjustified presuppositions, while he's the one making the unjustified presuppositions. I'm not making any unjustified presuppositions. I'm not making any presupposition. A presupposition is unjustified just on its own. You can agree on presuppositions, but you can confirm presuppositions outside of, like, okay, so if you're having an argument, okay, well, we're going to presuppose what these terms mean. We're going to presuppose logic and reason for the purposes of this argument, but outside of that argument, you can confirm logic on its own. You can confirm the usage of certain terms, but he has unjustified presuppositions. I do not. I don't even have presuppositions. So I start, as I tried to offer in the beginning, I start with the brute facts of observations. I observe things. This is indisputable. Whether they're delusions or not, I observe things, and I observe what I observe. So eventually I start doing things, okay? And then I start observing that certain methods give certain results. We're still in brute fact observation. So the method of logic and reason gives more consistent and good results. So I've observed brute fact all the way to this. It rests on no presuppositions, and they're all justified. And the fact that I can look at certain methods and I get different observations for different methods is an indicator that it's not just happening in my mind, because if it was all just happening in my mind, it wouldn't necessarily have different outcomes. My mind could just fill in the outcomes anyway. If I wanted to get an A on a test, I could just fart, and I would just magically get an A on the test. I wouldn't have to study if it's all just in my mind. If there's no rules to the system, and the fact that there are different observations that are cross-corroborating with each other. It's not that, oh, my observation, my experience of a smell justifies my experience of a smell. Well, it's a brute fact that I smell a certain thing. But if other people have the same sense, if I can use certain senses to predict other senses, if memories and senses align, there's a cross-corroboration there, cross-confirmation, and thus it gives me at least a non-zero probability of those observations being accurate. They're more likely to be accurate. Now you might say, well, I need reasoning in order to make that argument, in order to make conclusions and inferences. But I don't need reasoning in order to observe that the method of reasoning gives results. That's just a brute fact observation. Same with the fact that if observations are cross-confirming each other, all I'm doing is observing consistency. Now, when arguing with these people,
apparently they prefer the word retard.
Aye?
it is helpful to be able to defend your position like that, but it's also important to not give up on the offensive. The important part is that they can't hold to their own standards. They have no ability to check whether their assumption, their unjustified assumption that their revelation, that their experience of revelation is reliable, that it's accurate, they can't justify that.
Right. Evidence.
They can't justify natural revelation without using rationality and logic, which is a circular argument because they say natural revelation is their basis upon which they rest logic and reason.
See, when you do clownery, the clown comes back to bite.
So, never let this point go. Don't let them weasel out of it. If you have to let go the defense of your own position and just say, look, we're on equal footing, you can't justify your assumptions. Just as I can't justify an assumption of a rational mind, neither can you. And that destroys their entire argument. And then we can discuss whether or not just brute force observations can be tested for their reliability. This is a red herring too. These are separate issues. The existence of God, different issue of whether or not your senses and your rationality can be trusted.
Delusions!
And the thing is, you can actually prove that these are irrelevant subjects. I mean, you can explain to them why. It's quite obvious. If you applied this to any other subject, like, well, are the crime rates of X community, blah, 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 and the response is, well, how do you know anything at all? It would be quite obvious that these are different subjects, but the way you can prove this is you point out that they're committing the fallacy known as affirming the consequent, which is essentially, basically what happens is they're taking the consequent and saying that therefore it is a certain cause, i.e. their God is the cause for logic and reason, even though there might be other causes for logic and reason. So it's like reverse logic. So if God exists, then there is logic and reason. There is logic and reason, therefore God. That is a fallacy because there could be other causes to logic and reason. The proof of this is, if I have the flu, then I have a fever. And the fallacy would be, if I have a fever, then I have the flu. It's a fallacy because the flu isn't the only thing that could give you a fever. So when they try to insist that God is the only cause of logic and reason, this is actually a fallacy. It's not even just an unsupported, unsound premise, it's a fallacy. Affirming the consequent. Whenever you hear someone deliberately say, you need to distrust your mind, you need to distrust thinking itself, you need to distrust perceptions, you know that they have a weak argument. You know that they're being dishonest with you because they're trying to push. They don't want to defend their argument. They're trying to push this very difficult question of how do we know anything on top of them proving their point so that they can try and laugh at you while you flail and try and defend how do we know anything, and they try and tie that in with, well, then you're wrong. Because then they just declare that, well, I can know with God. So you have to separate these issues. Don't allow them to conflate them. That's why this issue of precepts conflating ontology and epistemology is so important. Alright guys, let me know in the comments if you want to see more clownery from Redefine Living, or as I like to call him, Redefine Failing.
Fuck face!
Because he really redefines how just absolutely low one can go and how fractally wrong someone can be just in one sentence.
It's not out of the question that you might have a very minor case of serious brain damage.
God bless.
Do you believe in God?
I believe.
You do?
I believe in God. Oh, I believe in God.
You do?
Oh, I believe in God.
Do you?
I believe in God.